During a time of war in a foreign land, Captain Emily Carter found herself at the center of a situation that would change her life. Emily was a pilot in the U.S. Army Air Corps, the organization that existed before the U.S. Air Force was created. She was known for her exceptional flying skills, her quick thinking under pressure, and her deep commitment to serving her country. However, despite her talents, she was not widely recognized outside her squadron. Few people knew her name, and she was not celebrated in the way that some of her male colleagues were. Still, those who worked closely with her respected her abilities and trusted her judgment. One day, Emily received an assignment that was unlike anything she had faced before. She was told that she had been chosen for a mission so secret and so important that even the other pilots in her squadron were not informed about it. Usually, pilots share details about upcoming missions, talk through their strategies, and prepare as a team. This time, however, Emily was alone in her knowledge. The orders were given directly to her, and she was instructed to tell no one. At first, Emily felt a mixture of pride and fear. She was honored that her commanders had chosen her for such an important task. It meant they trusted her abilities and believed that she was capable of handling something so dangerous and delicate. At the same time, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her shoulders. If she failed, the consequences could be serious not only for her, but also for her country and the people depending on her success. The secrecy surrounding the mission made it even more difficult, because she could not lean on the support of her fellow pilots for advice or encouragement. As Emily prepared, she thought about why she might have been chosen. Perhaps it was her precision as a pilot, her ability to stay calm under stress, or her reputation for following orders exactly while still thinking creatively when challenges arose. Whatever the reason, she knew she had to carry out the mission with complete focus and determination. The idea of going somewhere unknown, on a task no one else knew about, filled Emily with both nervous energy and quiet courage. She understood that secrecy was part of military life, and that sometimes the success of an operation depended on absolute silence. Still, it was not easy to keep such a heavy secret from the people she trained and flew with every day. Captain Emily Carter's selection for the mission showed the unique combination of skill, trustworthiness, and bravery that defined her as a pilot. While her name might not have been famous, and while she remained little known to the outside world, this moment revealed her true importance. She was not just another pilot. She was someone capable of carrying out a mission so critical and confidential that only a handful of people in the entire military even knew it existed. Captain Emily Carter soon received her official mission orders, and they were unlike anything she had ever seen before. The instructions were coded, meaning they were written in a special, secret format that only certain people could understand. This was done to protect the mission details from falling into the wrong hands. If the enemy intercepted the message, they would not be able to read or understand it. The secrecy itself showed just how important and dangerous this mission was. When Emily carefully decoded the message, she discovered what her task would be. She was ordered to infiltrate enemy airspace. This meant she would have to fly her aircraft across the invisible line of safety and into skies controlled by the enemy. Doing so was extremely risky because enemy planes, radar, and anti-aircraft weapons would be ready to detect and attack any intruder. She would need to use all her flying skills to stay hidden, flying low, or finding routes that would allow her to avoid detection. The second part of her mission was even more dangerous. She had to locate and disable a hidden weapons facility. This facility was not just any building. It was a secret base where the enemy stored or built weapons that could be used against her country's forces. Because it was hidden, finding it would require careful navigation and precise timing. Destroying or disabling it would require incredible accuracy and courage, as enemy defenses around such a place would likely be strong. The success of this task could mean saving countless lives by preventing the enemy from using those weapons in the war. Finally, Emily's orders made it clear that after completing her mission, she had to return undetected. This was perhaps the hardest part of all. Striking the enemy would immediately put them on alert, and they would send aircraft and defenses to chase her down. Escaping without being seen or shot down would demand not only skill, but also quick thinking and bravery. One mistake could cost her life and the mission. What made the mission even more serious was that the success or failure of the entire campaign depended on her. A campaign is a large military operation involving many battles, strategies, and goals. In this case, Emily's single mission was the key to the whole effort. If she succeeded, the enemy would lose a vital resource, giving her side the advantage. If she failed, the enemy's weapons facility would remain active, and her country's forces could face devastating losses. The weight of this responsibility was enormous, but it also showed the level of trust her commanders placed in her. Captain Emily Carter knew the risks. She understood that the mission would test her courage, intelligence, and flying ability to the limit. Yet, she also understood why she had been chosen. She was steady under pressure, resourceful, and fiercely loyal. Though the mission was secret, she knew its impact would be great. Everything depended on her. One woman, one plane, and one daring mission that could decide the outcome of the war. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, Captain Emily Carter began her dangerous mission. The timing was not random. Military planners often choose the middle of the night for operations like this because darkness gives the pilot some natural cover. Fewer enemy patrols are usually in the skies at this time, and the chance of being spotted by ground observers is much lower. The airfield was silent except for the sound of engines starting, and the dim red lights on the runway guided her aircraft forward into the dark sky. Her plane was no ordinary fighter jet. It had been specially modified to act as a stealth aircraft, meaning it was designed to avoid being detected by enemy radar systems. The surfaces of the jet absorbed radar signals instead of reflecting them, and its shape reduced the chances of being seen on enemy screens. This gave Emily a slight advantage, but it did not guarantee her safety. She still had to fly carefully, using both her skill and the design of the aircraft to stay hidden. As Emily climbed into the sky, she focused on her radar screen, the electronic device that showed her what was ahead. On the screen, all she could see were storm patterns. The storms looked like shifting waves of energy, with lightning and heavy clouds moving across the area. This was both good and bad for her mission. On the positive side, the storms could hide her from enemy radars because their signals would be mixed with the natural noise of the weather. On the negative side, the storms made flying more dangerous. Strong winds, turbulence, and poor visibility could easily throw her off course or even damage the plane if she wasn't careful. But Emily knew that beyond those storm clouds, hidden in the darkness, was a labyrinth of enemy defenses. A labyrinth is like a maze, twisting, complex, and full of traps. For her, this meant layers of danger: anti-aircraft missiles, ground-based radar stations, searchlights, and enemy fighter jets waiting to respond at a moment's notice. Each defense system was placed in a way that made it harder for an intruder to pass through without being detected. She had to carefully calculate her path, weaving between threats while still staying on track toward her target. Flying into this environment required more than just skill. It required intense concentration and courage. One wrong move could expose her to enemy radar, which would trigger alarms and bring attacks from every direction. The storms gave her partial cover, but she still had to remain precise with her instruments and trust her training. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady on the controls as she pushed forward into the unknown. At that moment, Captain Emily Carter embodied the balance between fear and determination. She knew the dangers ahead, yet she also knew the importance of her mission. Every mile brought her closer to the hidden weapons facility, and every second tested her courage. At 2 a.m., in the storm-filled skies, the success of an entire campaign rested on her ability to navigate through the labyrinth of enemy defenses unseen. As Captain Emily Carter approached the hidden weapons facility, the enemy realized that their defenses had been breached. Within moments, the dark sky lit up with streams of anti-aircraft fire. These weapons were designed to shoot down planes exactly like hers, filling the air with bursts of deadly explosions. Each shell left glowing trails across the night sky, creating a wall of fire between Emily and her target. The danger was immediate and overwhelming. Any mistake in her movements could mean disaster, yet Emily kept her focus. With calm determination, she made the decision to perform a high-risk maneuver. In flying terms, this meant she would push her aircraft to its absolute limits, moving in ways that few pilots would dare attempt. She dove steeply, twisting her jet at sharp angles to avoid the enemy's tracking weapons. The G-forces pressed against her body, making it harder to breathe and think clearly, but her training and instincts took over. Each movement had to be timed perfectly. A second too slow or a degree off course, and her plane could be torn apart by enemy fire. Despite the chaos around her, Emily held her course and reached the critical moment of the mission. With steady hands, she released her precision bombs. These weapons were designed to strike with incredible accuracy, hitting only the intended target while avoiding unnecessary destruction. She watched as the bombs streaked downward, guided by her exact calculations. Seconds later, a series of explosions shook the ground below, confirming that the hidden weapons facility had been hit. Emily had achieved her objective, disabling the enemy stronghold that threatened her country's forces. But the danger was far from over. Just as Emily turned her jet to escape, her communication systems went dead. The enemy had jammed her signals, blocking all radio contact. She could no longer hear her commanders, call for backup, or receive guidance from her squadron. In the middle of hostile territory, she was now completely on her own. For the next 200 miles, Emily had to rely only on her instruments, her instincts, and her courage. This situation is often described as flying blind. Without communication or outside support, every decision rested solely on her. The enemy could have been tracking her movements, waiting for the right moment to strike, and she had no way of knowing. All she could do was stay low, keep her radar scanning for threats, and trust her ability to navigate through the hostile skies. Those long miles tested Emily more than any training exercise ever had. The silence in her cockpit was heavy, broken only by the sound of her jet's engines and the occasional warning signals from her instruments. Yet she pressed forward, determined not to let fear control her. She had completed the mission, and now survival depended on her ability to remain calm and alert. Captain Emily Carter's escape was a powerful reminder of her bravery, skill, and unshakable determination. Even in the face of overwhelming danger, she carried out her mission and continued forward, proving that true courage is often shown in the loneliest and most uncertain moments. As Captain Emily Carter pushed forward on her return flight, she suddenly picked up a coded signal through her radio system. At first, she felt a sense of relief. The signal seemed to suggest that her own command was reaching out, perhaps to guide her safely home or to give her updated instructions. After flying blind for so long with her communications jammed, hearing something familiar brought her a flicker of hope. But very quickly, she realized something was wrong. The signal didn't follow the normal patterns she had been trained to recognize. The rhythm and tone were slightly off, and the more she studied it, the more suspicious it seemed. Her instincts told her the truth. The signal was not genuine. It was a trap. Someone was trying to lure her into a dangerous position. Instead of leading her toward safety, the signal was designed to pull her closer to enemy weapons waiting to strike. The thought chilled her. If the enemy could mimic her command's coded signals, it meant they had access to information they should never have had. In that moment, Emily made a shocking discovery. The only way the enemy could have set up such a precise trap was if someone inside her own command structure had betrayed her. Her flight path, which was supposed to be a tightly guarded secret, had been leaked. This betrayal meant the enemy knew where she would be, when she would arrive, and even what signals to send to try to manipulate her. It was more than just an ambush. It was proof of a spy or traitor working against her from within. Before she could fully process the weight of that betrayal, her onboard warning system began to blare. Missiles had locked onto her aircraft. On her radar, glowing indicators showed multiple threats closing in rapidly. The enemy had been waiting, and now they had her in their sights. Every second mattered. If she stayed on her current path for even a moment longer, she would be destroyed. Emily's training and instincts kicked in. She gripped the controls tightly and began to scramble for escape. Scrambling meant performing sudden, unpredictable movements, sharp dives, rapid climbs, and evasive rolls, all in an effort to break the missile locks. The G-forces pressed her against the seat as she twisted the jet in extreme angles, pushing it to its limits. She released flares and chaff, special countermeasures designed to confuse the incoming missiles by creating false heat signatures and radar reflections. Each maneuver was dangerous, but she had no choice. The enemy's betrayal and the missiles on her tail left her with only one option: fight to survive. Her heart pounded, but she remained focused, knowing that hesitation could cost her life. This terrifying moment revealed just how high the stakes truly were. Emily was not only fighting an enemy outside her borders, but also facing betrayal from within. The realization that someone in her own command had endangered her made the mission even more dangerous and personal. Yet, even with missiles chasing her through the night sky, Captain Emily Carter showed the same determination that had carried her through every challenge before: an unshakable will to survive, complete her mission, and uncover the truth behind the betrayal. In the middle of the life-or-death chase, Captain Emily Carter realized she was running out of options. Enemy missiles were closing in, her countermeasures were nearly gone, and her jet was already taking strain from the dangerous maneuvers. At that moment, she remembered a desperate tactic she had been taught long ago in training, a last-resort trick meant only for situations when survival seemed almost impossible. It was risky and difficult, but if it worked, it could convince the enemy that she had already been destroyed. The trick involved creating the illusion of a crash on enemy radar. Using her onboard systems, Emily released flares and metal chaff in a precise sequence while sharply changing her altitude. To enemy sensors, the sudden burst of heat and scattered signals looked like the remains of an exploding aircraft. At the same time, she cut her jet's power briefly and dropped into a steep dive, making it appear as if she had lost control. On radar screens miles away, the enemy would see only the false image of a destroyed fighter, and they would assume their mission was complete. But Emily was not finished. Instead of being destroyed, she skillfully guided her jet downward toward a canyon below. The canyon walls were steep and twisting, providing natural cover from radar and enemy aircraft. Flying into such terrain was extremely dangerous. One wrong turn could mean slamming into rock at high speed, but it was also her best chance to hide. Using all her training and instincts, she hugged the canyon's curves, keeping her jet low and out of sight. To the enemy above, Emily had simply vanished. Their radar showed wreckage where her plane should have been, and they had no idea that she was still alive, flying just beneath them. The relief was enormous, but it was not without cost. During the escape, her jet had taken damage from earlier near misses and the strain of sudden maneuvers. Warning lights flashed in the cockpit, reminding her that the aircraft was no longer at full strength. Some systems were partially failing, and the jet shuddered as she pushed it through the air. Even so, it was still flying. That meant she still had a chance. Emily knew that her survival was not just about saving herself. It was about completing the mission, carrying the knowledge of betrayal back to her commanders, and ensuring that the enemy could not exploit the leak again. Every mile she gained brought her closer to safety, but also closer to the moment when her damaged jet might give out. What made this moment extraordinary was Emily's ability to stay calm under impossible pressure. Instead of giving in to fear when surrounded by missiles and betrayal, she relied on her training, her creativity, and her courage. She turned a last-resort trick into a lifeline, disappearing under the enemy's nose and proving that even in the darkest situations, determination and skill can create hope. Her jet was battered and scarred, But like Emily herself, it continued to push forward, carrying her toward the next challenge. As the night faded and the first light of dawn touched the sky, Captain Emily Carter finally crossed back over the border into friendly territory. Her jet was badly damaged, its engines straining, wings scarred, and warning lights still flashing across her control panel. Every mile she flew felt uncertain, as though the aircraft could give out at any moment. She guided it with steady hands, determined to reach safety no matter the cost. When she finally spotted an abandoned airstrip below, she knew it was her only chance to land. The airstrip looked old and forgotten. Cracks split the runway, weeds pushed through the concrete, and the paint that once marked the landing path had nearly disappeared. Still, it was flat and long enough for her damaged jet. With great effort, Emily lowered her landing gear, praying it would lock in place. The aircraft wobbled as she descended, touching down roughly on the uneven surface. The tires screeched, smoke rose, and the plane rattled violently, but at last it slowed to a stop. She had made it back alive. But the moment her jet came to rest, Emily realized something was wrong. She looked around for signs of life, other pilots, ground crews, or rescue vehicles that should have been waiting for her return. There was nothing. No welcoming crew appeared to congratulate her on completing the mission. No rescue team rushed in to check her injuries or the condition of her jet. The airfield was completely silent, as if no one had ever expected her to come back. A heavy feeling sank in her chest. Slowly, Emily began to understand the truth. This mission had been designed to be deniable. In military terms, a deniable mission is one that leaders can pretend never happened. If she had been captured or killed, no one would have admitted that she was ever sent. Her name, her flight, and even her sacrifice would have been erased or hidden. The secrecy around her orders, the lack of support, and now the empty airstrip all pointed to one reality. She had been sent into danger with no guarantee that her survival even mattered to those who gave the command. Emily sat quietly in the cockpit for a moment, letting the silence wash over her. The exhaustion from the long night caught up to her, but her mind remained sharp. She thought about the coded trap, the betrayal within her own command, and the near-death chase through enemy skies. Now, standing alone on an abandoned runway, she realized she had not only carried out a mission, but uncovered something larger. Someone had wanted her to disappear, and the truth to vanish with her. Even though she felt abandoned, Emily's spirit did not break. If anything, the silence strengthened her resolve. She understood that surviving this mission gave her power, the power to speak the truth about what had really happened. Landing in solitude was not the end of her fight. It was the beginning of uncovering why the mission had been hidden and who had betrayed her. At dawn, in the stillness of that forgotten airstrip, Captain Emily Carter faced the harsh truth. She had been used as a ghost soldier in a deniable mission. Yet she was still alive, and as long as she lived, the secret could not remain buried forever. When Captain Emily Carter finally arrived at her military headquarters, she expected at least some recognition for what she had endured. She had risked her life, flown through enemy fire, destroyed a dangerous weapons facility, and survived betrayal from within her own command. Even though she landed on an abandoned strip, she thought that once she made it back to base, her role would be acknowledged. Instead, she discovered a cold and shocking truth. She had been erased. The first sign came when she checked the official records. In the flight logs, which carefully record every aircraft that leaves and returns, her name was missing. There was no record of her mission, no note of her departure, and no entry for her return. According to the documents, Emily had never taken off that night. The mission and her involvement in it had been completely wiped from history. Her confusion turned into dread when her uniform was taken from her. The uniform was not just clothing. It represented her identity as an officer, a pilot, and a servant of her country. Every patch, every stripe, and every insignia told the story of her service. But now it was stripped away, leaving her standing vulnerable, as if the years of loyalty and sacrifice meant nothing. Without her uniform, Emily felt like her very identity as a soldier was being ripped away piece by piece. The most devastating blow came next. Officials told her that her identity was now classified. In military terms, this meant that everything about her, her name, her actions, her mission, was locked away in secrecy, hidden from the public and even from many within the armed forces. She was no longer free to speak about who she was or what she had done. To anyone outside those secret files, she did not exist. It was as if she had been turned into a ghost, erased not by death, but by design. To the world beyond the walls of the headquarters, Captain Emily Carter had never lived. No one would know about her daring flight into enemy airspace, her brush with death, or her survival against impossible odds. Families would not hear her story in newspapers. Her bravery would not be recorded in history books, and her fellow soldiers would not even know she had fought for them. Her sacrifice and her courage had been buried under the heavy weight of secrecy. For Emily, this was more painful than the danger she had faced in the skies. She could accept the risks of war, but not the erasure of her very existence. The silence around her name was not just an insult. It was a deliberate effort to make sure the truth never came out. Yet, even stripped of her uniform and her recognition, Emily still carried the memory of what she had done. She knew that even if the world believed she had never existed, the reality of her courage and survival could not be destroyed. Deep inside, she promised herself that one day the truth would be revealed and her erased identity would return to light. When the mission was over, Captain Emily Carter expected that at least some part of the truth would come out. She had risked everything, her life, her career, and even her identity, to stop a dangerous enemy plan. Without her courage and skill, thousands of innocent people would have been lost. But when she finally saw the newspapers, her heart sank. The story of the mission was on every front page, but her name was nowhere to be found. The headlines spoke about a mysterious, unknown strike that had destroyed an enemy facility. Journalists called it a brilliant operation that saved countless lives. Yet, instead of crediting the victory to Emily, the papers claimed it was a collective effort. The wording made it sound as though no single person had been responsible. It was described as the work of nameless teams, hidden intelligence units, and vague military action. The public was told only enough to feel safe, but not enough to know the truth. For Emily, this was both painful and surreal. She read the words carefully, realizing that the world would never know the real story. People cheered for the success, but they cheered for a faceless idea rather than the woman who had actually carried out the mission. All of her courage, flying through storms of anti-aircraft fire, dodging missiles, faking a crash, and escaping betrayal, was now hidden behind a convenient phrase, a collective effort. She sat quietly in a small, safe house, away from the noise of the world. The safe house was meant to protect her, but it also felt like a cage. Its walls were plain, the windows were covered, and no one came to visit except for the occasional officer who reminded her to stay invisible. From this secret place, she watched the outside world move on. Television screens and newspaper articles praised the nameless strike, but none of them hinted that a single woman had made it possible. Emily knew the truth. It was her alone. She had taken the risk, flown the mission, and made the decisions that determined success or failure. Without her skill and determination, there would have been no victory to celebrate. Yet she also understood why the story was being told this way. Leaders wanted the operation to remain deniable. Giving her credit would mean admitting the mission had happened, and admitting it would reveal secrets they wanted buried. Still, the knowledge weighed heavily on her heart. She wanted the world to know that one person's courage could change everything. She wanted families to understand that someone had fought in silence to keep them safe. But instead of recognition, she was forced into shadow. Her bravery was hidden, her name erased, and her story told as if she had never existed. As she folded the newspaper and set it aside, Emily reminded herself of one truth. The mission may have been credited to a collective effort, but she would always know the reality. Deep down, she carried the pride of surviving and succeeding when no one else could. Even if the world never knew her name, she knew her own worth, and that knowledge gave her strength to keep moving forward. Many years passed after Captain Emily Carter's secret mission, and the world had long moved on. The newspapers no longer spoke about the mysterious, unknown strike, and the people who had once felt fear no longer remembered the danger she had stopped. But Emily carried her memories quietly into her new life. She chose to settle down in a small coastal town, far away from the busy cities, military bases, and politics that had once surrounded her. The town was peaceful, filled with the sound of ocean waves, the cry of seabirds, and the salty wind that swept in from the shore. Though she lived simply, Emily kept one powerful reminder of her past. Inside a wooden box, carefully tucked away in her modest home, she hid a relic from the mission, a scorched wing badge. It was a pilot's badge that had been burned and damaged during the dangerous operation, yet Emily treasured it above all else. To anyone else, it might have looked like a worthless piece of metal, but to Emily it carried a story of courage, survival, and sacrifice. It was proof that she had been there, that she had flown into enemy skies, and that she had saved thousands of lives even if the world never knew her name. She never displayed the badge openly. It was too precious and too tied to secrets that others had tried to erase. Instead, she kept it hidden in the wooden box, safe and private. Every so often, when she needed strength or when memories returned, she would open the box and hold the relic in her hand. Feeling the rough, scorched edges reminded her of the fire she had flown through and the risks she had taken. It was her personal reminder that even though the world had forgotten, her actions were real. On stormy nights, the town often faced heavy winds and waves crashing against the shore. Many people in the town closed their windows and stayed inside, but Emily would sometimes step outside and look up at the storm-filled sky. The lightning, thunder, and dark clouds reminded her of that night long ago when she had flown through danger with only her courage to guide her. Instead of fear, the storms brought her a sense of peace. She would smile softly, knowing that the storms in the sky could never match the storm she had once survived in the air. Even though no medals were given to her, no stories were written in her name, and no public honor was ever offered, Emily carried her pride quietly. She knew the truth. She had saved her country. She had prevented destruction and protected lives, even though history books would never mention her. To others, she was just another woman in a small town. But to herself, she was someone who had faced impossible odds and won. Each time she looked at the scorched wing badge, Emily felt a quiet joy. The world might never say her name, but she did not need recognition to understand her worth. She lived with the peace of knowing she had done something extraordinary, and that truth was enough.